With Steam, the Nintendo eShop and other platforms literally offering hundreds of new games each month, it's not surprising many excellent ones fail to make their mark as well as they might. Welcome once again to Get Indie Gaming, where today we're counting down 10 more indie game hidden gems we think you should play you might have missed when they first came out. First up at number 10, although mostly in random order, from October of last year, Arsenal Demon, while on the face of things looks like any number of those derivative 90s throwback wave-based shooters, this has way more going underneath it than you might expect. Now, it's super fast, although you don't need the equivalent super fast reactions to be able to play this well and be successful with it, which I really enjoyed, as did I in how this all looks, with it mixing up really odd and sinister looking enemies, with it also coming with a cracking breakbeat infused soundtrack which had me at least ebbing and swaying in time with it as I played. The best mode, or the one I had the most fun with at least, is the Demon mode, which has you starting off with minimal kit and forces you to level up, as it were, to gain access to more guns and additional movement abilities. It's hardly subtle, but as wave shooters go, it's excellent fun. Next up, and something so very different, we have Little Mouse's Encyclopaedia, which is firmly aimed at the younger generation, and in this continued period of homeschooling, we've played this over and over with our two kids. Well, they're not that little, although they've both enjoyed this and keep asking to see more of it. While recently it's been free on itch.io, as I look today, that's no longer the case, although this really is a delight with it being ever so beautiful. Here you join a mouse on their journey across 4 different habitats, where you come across and learn about over 160 different species of animals and plants. As should be very much apparent, it's all about a learning experience, and it's honestly for adults and kids alike. And it's honestly so full of the airs and graces we like to cover from time to time here on the channel. Some younger players will need help with some of the text, although that can be taken care of by way of adults and older siblings. Little Mouse's Encyclopaedia came out in February of last year and can be found on Steam, itch.io and also both the Apple and Google App Stores. Up now, and at number 8 we have Spin Rhythm XD, which came out in early access in October of last year. I've been playing rhythm games now for coming up to, goodness me, 3 decades, and this particular offering, well, it's right up there with the best of them, such as Guitar Hero, for a few good reasons. These sort of games usually have 1 or 2 core mechanics and loops. The first is to mimic what creating music is actually like, and the other is to have you interact with, say, a controller while flicking or pressing buttons in time with the game. Spin Rhythm XD works so well as it's essentially able to recreate both of these types of formats. It has you tapping along to the beats, and also using some of the thumbsticks to bend and pitch the tunes. It's kinda hard to explain what it does, although having played such games, as I said, for nearly 30 years, I can't recall playing something that feels so intuitive and natural. As for the music, well, that's pretty much all excellent without a dud track amongst it. While out in early access on Steam, full release is expected later this year, with it also coming to the Switch. At number 7, and something we all missed here at Get Indie Gaming when it first came out around this time last year, Supraland totally went over our heads, and we only spotted it towards the tail end of the year when it came up in a few people's end of year rundowns. Now, it all comes with a super cute premise. You're a little red plastic toy living in, let's call it a town, all within the back garden of a little boy with himself lurking about the place, and very much acting and playing as a little god. As for the gameplay, well, it describes itself as a cross between Portal, Metroid and Zelda, which is, to be honest, spot on. The Metroid sections particularly are done so very well, and I love how it doesn't use physical gated sections which you often see in such games, which is a great little touch. It's also massive with so much going on that I completed the main game with just over 65% all done, still had loads more to see and do with plenty of subquests and collectibles to go and check out. The only downside here is the combat, which feels slightly underwhelming, and it's also, well, a bit unnecessary. In any case, it's mostly brilliant, and if you have yet to see or play it, there's a demo which you can have via the Steam homepage, and like all games in this rundown, you'll find a link to it down there in the description. Up next, and at number 6, we have Outbuddies, which came out in October of last year, and is essentially the work of a single developer, with it starting as a spare time passion project all the way back in 2013. Now, what I really like about this one, as I think will other players who enjoy Metroid, Mega Man, Castlevania and platformers, is how the main focus here is on exploration and progression without it being all about getting over and beating things by way of exceptional difficulty. This is actually one of the games I'd suggest people look at if they don't usually like these sort of games. The approach to death is quite sensible, and while some will be annoyed by that, you're not having to do the whole play, die, rinse, repeat and backtrack you often see within such games, and in doing so, well, it's hugely accessible. It's also huge, with perhaps the one gripe being the map, which is at times confusing to navigate, although for me at least, that's essentially my only little moan. Outbuddies is utterly impressive, and in co-op, the buddy system is properly awesome. Boy, would I love to see this come out for the Switch. At number 5, Phantom Rose is another excellent deck-building roguelike that switches a few things around in comparison to many of its contemporaries. These games usually have you pick and choose cards to play from your deck, although here, the cards are selected for you, with you being able to make a few changes and alterations from an alternate hand that's again chosen for you. These cards are also not permanent. Once used, they vanish and are gone for good. This of course means you're forever having to adapt and adjust your playstyle, with you needing to experiment and find different ways of overcoming your foes, rather than just sticking to what you know. It's also a fine and fair challenge, especially when you're gifted the odd dud hand from time to time. Phantom Rose came out in the summer of last year and can be found on Steam for Windows and Mac OS. Let's crack on with this month's number 4, where we find Eastshade. This came out in February of last year onto the PlayStation 4, the Xbox One and via Steam. I'd all forgotten about this one until a few days ago when I stumbled back across it when making space on my PlayStation 4 for a few new games, and having done so, well, I decided to take another look, and you know what? Going back into it has been really rather welcome. It's just so peaceful and tranquil and looks so very gorgeous. It's almost perfect for my current headspace, with it seeing you play as an artist where you're visiting the island of Lindau just to paint pictures in memory of your late mother. It's free from violence, and for once in an RPG, you're not the all-conquering hero. It's different, and to my mind, well, it's one of the prettiest games to come out over the whole of last year. At number 3 we have Feather, which came out in April of last year, with it being quite the overall serene experience. There's in truth not that much going on, and like a few other games I've played and show off here of late, it's one of those that's easy to turn on when looking for something to wind down with at the end of the day. All you're doing here, and I say all you're doing, is flying about the place as a bird in what's really a place to go and retreat into. It does have its secrets and things for you to discover, though the act of flying that bird and undertaking loops and swoops within the ambient soundtrack, it's really rather wonderful. The full day, night and weather cycles, and the addition of online play where you're able to fly along with others, really puts me in mind of something like Journey. While simple on the surface, there's really a lot going on here to keep you entertained, and I found it perfect for something that's so calming and contemplative. You can find this one on the eShop, Itch and Steam. At number 2 and out on Steam from the tail end of last year, Frog Detective 2, The Case of the Invisible Wizard, to correctly give it its full title, is another one of those calm, gentle and deliciously paced games. And it's got such a big heart to it. The writing is brilliant throughout, with it being honestly and genuinely humorous all the way through. While it doesn't branch though, that doesn't really matter. It's also just amusing to look at. The characters are full of life, wholesomeness, and bring some cracking, if frankly bizarre dialogue to the table that again, well, it just works so very well. You'd be forgiven if you're thinking this is aimed solely at children, and yes, my eldest, who's coming up close to double digits in age, thought it was all great, particularly the vibrancy of colours and also in places how deadpan some of the writing is, which he and I, well, we both really enjoyed. Hopefully there'll be plenty more to come in the future from this wonderful little frog. From late January, the #1 hidden gem for this April 2020 was actually featured here on Get Indie Gaming in one of the first videos we did all the way back in early 2017, where we covered its successful Kickstarter. Essentially, the Pedestrian is a puzzle platforming game where you control a person that looks like something you might see, say, within a bathroom or restroom sign. You are tasked with taking the character through other signs within a virtual city where you move between different signs and scenes, all the while having to figure out the best way to connect the two together. It's cleverly done and very beautiful to look at. The puzzles are great fun, and on some occasions, well, they took me perhaps longer than might have been expected, as on occasions I needed to get my head around where things needed to be in, say, 2 or 3 separate layers to successfully move throughout the puzzle. The Pedestrian in places can feel really special, and as we say perhaps too often, it can make you feel really clever when you place things where they need to be, and as you watch the character make their way through the level all in one go. It's tremendously satisfying. We'd love to see more people playing the Pedestrian, and like all of the games featured in this video, if you plan on getting hold of these or you have already done so, let us know down in the comments. There we go, and that's all from me, and as always, if you've liked this video, please click the like button and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already with the notification bell turned on. That's the best way to stay fully up to date with all of our indie game videos. In any case, many thanks for watching, and we'll see you all again here soon for another video.